A Gothic cathedral is far more than a monument to faith. Its stones were placed to capture a single beam of sunlight on one sacred day each year. This was no accident, but a line from a lost language, a celestial blueprint written across our world. You are about to learn how to read it. By the end of this journey, you will see every ancient painting and every stone circle as a sophisticated map of the heavens. Why would a civilization align an entire temple to a single star? How could a cave painting be a precise guide to the seasons? We will uncover the deep, symbiotic connection between early art, architecture, and astronomy, revealing how our ancestors used their greatest creations to converse directly with the cosmos. This story changes how we see human history itself. What part of the night sky do you think spoke most powerfully to the builders of the past? The torchlight dances across the curved stone, casting long shadows behind the painted bison and horses. In the profound silence of a place like Lascaux, you are not just looking at art, you are standing inside a three-dimensional star chart. For decades, these images were celebrated as magnificent records of the hunt, but a deeper pattern was waiting to be decoded. Researchers, including Dr. Michael Rappingluke, began to ask a different question. What if the placement of these animals was not random? What if the herd on the ceiling was a deliberate map of the herd in the heavens? The theory points to a stunning possibility. A specific cluster of painted dots above the shoulder of a great bull aligns precisely with the star cluster known as the Pleiades. This was not a casual decoration, it was a landmark in the sky. This transforms our understanding of the cave's purpose. It was more than a gallery or a shelter. It became humanity's first planetarium. The dome of rock overhead mirrored the dome of the night sky. By painting celestial patterns alongside earthly creatures, these artists forged a sacred link. The migration of the stars now told them when the real herds would migrate. The rising of a painted constellation could signal the coming of spring or the approach of winter. This art was a functional technology, a sophisticated mnemonic device for preserving the most vital knowledge a community possessed, the rhythm of time itself. So the birth of abstract thought, of representing something beyond the immediately visible, may have begun with this need to chart the invisible clockwork of the cosmos. Our first stories were not just told, they were painted on the walls, written in the language of stars, establishing a blueprint that would guide human creativity for thousands of years to come. The painted stars in the cave were a memory, but the stones were a promise. To move from marking the sky on a wall to moving the very earth itself required a revolution in human ambition. This is the megalithic code. Across Europe, from the windswept plains of Salisbury to the green hills of Ireland, our ancestors began to engineer the landscape into a permanent dialogue with the heavens. They traded the portability of pigment for the permanence of monument. Consider the sheer scale of this intention. The builders of Stonehenge did not simply gather local rocks. They sourced specific bluestones from mountains over 150 miles away, hauling each multi-ton slab across rivers and terrain. This was not a casual project. It was a generations-long mission to construct something far more sophisticated than a ritual space. It was to build a cosmic computer. Each massive stone was a carefully placed component in a grand machine made of earth and sky. The famous heel stone at Stonehenge acts like a celestial gun sight. When you stand at the center of the circle at dawn on the summer solstice, the longest day of the year, the sun rises directly over that single, distant monolith. It is a perfect alignment, a moment of engineered magic that happens only once a year. This precision repeats across the ancient world. In Ireland, the Great Mound of Newgrange, older than the pyramids, features a narrow roof box above its entrance. For just 17 minutes at sunrise on the winter solstice, a slender beam of golden light pierces that long, dark passageway to illuminate the inner chamber. It is an event so precise it feels like a door opening in time itself. So what were these structures calculating? They were calendars of immense complexity, tracking not just the sun, but the more subtle 19-year cycle of the moon. The positions of the stones captured data points, marking the extreme rising and setting points of these celestial bodies over decades and centuries. This knowledge was survival. Knowing precisely when the solstices would occur meant predicting the turn of seasons, planning for planting and harvest, and navigating by the stars. It was a communal operating system written in granite. The transition from the intimate, portable art of the caves to these colossal, landscape-altering architectures represents a pivotal leap. Humanity was no longer just observing the cosmos. It was now building permanent anchors into the earth, physical equations to hold the rhythms of the universe in place. The stones were their hard drive, and the passing sun was the code. The stones of Europe were a calendar, but the Egyptians built a universe in miniature. Along the life-giving Nile, architecture transcended mere monument to become a perfect mirror of the heavens. The Great Pyramid of Giza is the ultimate expression of this synthesis. Its four sides are aligned with the cardinal directions with an accuracy of a fraction of a degree, an engineering feat that still baffles experts, but its purpose was more than geographical precision. Deep within its core, narrow shafts, once dismissed as air vents, point like laser sights into the darkness. One aligns precisely with the star Thuban, the pole star of that ancient era. Another targets the belt of the constellation Orion, which the Egyptians saw as the celestial form of Osiris, the god of rebirth. This was not a tomb in a simple sense. It was a resurrection machine, a colossal device designed to project the soul of the pharaoh directly into the eternal cycles of the stars. The architecture itself was a launch pad for the afterlife. This celestial alignment was woven into the very fabric of daily ritual. The vast temple complex of Karnak was not a random collection of halls. It was laid out on a precise east-west axis, so that on the morning of the winter solstice, the rising sun would flood through the entire sequence of gateways, illuminating the inner sanctuary where the statue of the god Amun-Ra resided. The temple became a stage, and the sun was the lead actor in a divine play performed once a year. Every hieroglyph carved into those sun-washed walls reinforced this connection. The art told the stories of Ra sailing his solar bark across the sky, and of Isis searching the heavens for the pieces of Osiris, myths that were not mere tales but explanations of observable celestial events. The art narrated the sky, and the architecture framed its performance. Even the landscape participated. The winding path of the Nile was seen as the earthly reflection of the Milky Way, the celestial river of the gods. In this worldview, there was no separation. Astronomy provided the script, art illustrated the characters, and architecture built the theater. They were a single, divine language for speaking with the eternal. This seamless integration gave birth to the principles of sacred geometry, where the proportions of a temple were not just aesthetic choices, but were derived from the observed harmonies of the cosmos. The Egyptians did not just look at the stars, they built a world where you could walk among their patterns, a permanent stone and mortar bridge between earth and the divine sky. While Egypt built its resurrection machines along the river, another civilization was constructing stairways to the gods from the very dust of the plains. In Mesopotamia, the land between two rivers, the horizon was a flat, unbroken line. To reach the heavens, you had to build your own mountain. This was the ziggurat, a colossal stepped pyramid of baked mud brick that served as the literal and spiritual center of the city. It was not a tomb, but a bridge. The most legendary of these, the Etemenanke of Babylon, inspired the myth of the Tower of Babel, a story about human ambition to touch the divine. That ambition was rooted in precise celestial observation. Each ziggurat was carefully oriented to the cardinal points, its corners aligning with the sun's path at the solstices. The long staircases that climbed its faces were not just for procession, they were sight lines. At the summit, in a sacred shrine, priest astronomers tracked the wandering paths of planets against the fixed backdrop of stars. To them, Venus was not a ball of rock, it was the goddess Ishtar. Mars was Nergal, the god of conflict. The movement of these celestial bodies was the activity of the gods, a divine drama written in light. So the architecture provided the front row seat to the most important show in the universe. The very form of the structure told this story. The multiple ascending tiers represented the layered cosmos, from the earthly realm at the base, through the spheres of the wind and stars, up to the dwelling of the supreme deity at the pinnacle. Climbing the ziggurat was a symbolic journey through the heavens. This cosmic vision infused their art as well. The famous Ishtar Gate, with its glazed blue bricks, was adorned with rows of golden dragons and bulls. These were not random creatures. The dragon, or Mashassu, was a sacred animal of Marduk, the patron god of Babylon whose planet was Jupiter. The gate was a celestial map in ceramic, a protective charm that brought the order of the sky down into the bustling city streets. This seamless integration bore profound fruit. Babylonian astronomers, over centuries of meticulous night watch, compiled detailed records of planetary cycles, lunar eclipses, and stellar positions. They could predict the movements of Venus with remarkable accuracy. This data was sacred scripture, directly informing the myths inscribed on their clay tablets and dictating the proportions of their temples. The ziggurat was the ultimate instrument of this philosophy. It made the city a microcosm, a mirror of the celestial order here on Earth. In Mesopotamia, the roles of priest, astronomer, architect, and artist were one and the same. They perfected the idea that to build for the gods, you first had to learn the mathematics of their heavenly paths. This legacy of urban cosmic order would become a blueprint, carried westward to influence empires yet unborn. Mesopotamia's ziggurats were mountains of data, but the Greeks sought the equation behind the numbers. Their genius was to ask not just how the heavens moved, but why they moved with such perfect, repeating grace. This was the birth of a new idea, cosmic harmony, and it would reshape the very soul of Western art and architecture. For thinkers like Pythagoras, the universe was not a chaotic battleground of gods. It was a sublime musical instrument. He proposed that the planets, as they sped through their orbits, produced distinct tones, a celestial symphony inaudible to human ears, the music of the spheres. This was not mere poetry. It was a philosophical blueprint suggesting that beauty, mathematics, and cosmic truth were one and the same. This principle was poured directly into stone. Look at the Parthenon crowning the Acropolis. Its legendary perfection is not just in its marble, but in its mathematics. The ratio governing the spacing of its columns, the width to its height, these proportions were calculated to please the eye because they were believed to mirror the divine ratios governing the cosmos itself. The temple was a frozen chord from the universal symphony. This alignment was also literal. Greek temples were often precisely oriented so that on the feast day of the god housed within, the rising sun would blaze directly down the main axis, flooding the cult statue with light. The architecture created a scheduled moment of epiphany, a yearly confirmation of the bond between the celestial order and the community below. Their art served the same philosophical purpose. The myths painted on vases and carved into friezes were the user manual for the night sky. The tale of the great hunter Orion, placed among the stars by Artemis, or the seven sisters of the Pleiades, fleeing across the heavens. These stories transformed random star patterns into a coherent, moral narrative. They explain the cosmos through human drama, making the vast and impersonal intimately knowable. This intellectual shift reached its peak with Plato and Aristotle, who framed the cosmos as a series of perfect concentric spheres rotating around the Earth. This model, while incorrect, was profoundly influential because it was rational. It replaced capricious divine whim with a system governed by elegant, predictable principles. Art and architecture were no longer just tributes to the gods. They became attempts to replicate this divine rationality on Earth. The goal was to build and create in a way that resonated with the hidden music of the universe. This Greek philosophical blueprint, this search for an underlying mathematical harmony in all things, provided the essential intellectual toolkit. It was this profound inheritance, this belief in a rational, beautiful, and mathematically ordered cosmos, that medieval scholars and masons would later rediscover and weave into the very fabric of their own soaring cathedrals. The music of the spheres had been composed, and its melody was waiting to be built. The Greek symphony of spheres was a beautiful theory, but the Romans were engineers. They took that philosophical blueprint and built it at a staggering, imperial scale, giving the cosmos a permanent home in the heart of their empire. Their revolutionary tool was the dome. More than a roof, it was a vault of heaven cast in concrete. The Pantheon in Rome stands as the ultimate testament to this ambition. Step inside and you're standing within a perfect sphere, the height from floor to apex exactly matching the diameter of the rotunda. This is the Greek cosmic model made physically real, a universe you can walk inside. And at its summit, the oculus, a single, open eye to the sky. This is the genius of the design. It is not a window, but a celestial instrument. Throughout the day, a brilliant beam of sunlight pours through that opening, traveling like a slow, silent clock hand across the marble floor and up the walls. It marks the hours with luminous precision. Over the course of the year, the patch of light shifts, its intensity and angle changing with the seasons. The entire majestic space becomes a monumental sundial and a working model of the cosmos, all governed by that one circle of open sky. This engineering was framed by art that reinforced the message. The interior's coffered ceiling, with its recessed squares, may have originally been gilded to resemble a starry night. Mosaics and frescoes throughout Roman architecture depicted Apollo driving his solar chariot, Luna with her crescent moon, and the full pantheon of planetary gods. Zodiacal symbols adorned floors and walls, weaving celestial symbolism into the fabric of daily civic and religious life. This fusion was a profound statement of power. By housing the heavens in a building of their own making, Rome projected an idea of divine mandate. It suggested the empire did not just rule territories, but govern the very natural order itself. The dome became the ultimate architectural metaphor for celestial authority. This legacy did not fade with the empire. It was carried forward, most brilliantly, into the heart of the Byzantine world. There, in places like the Hagia Sophia, the dome would be lifted on a ring of windows, creating the illusion that its golden canopy was floating, suspended by divine light. This Roman innovation, the dome as the vault of heaven, set a direct precedent. It provided the physical and symbolic vocabulary that medieval builders across Europe would later passionately adopt and reinterpret. They would look up at those vast, curved ceilings and see not just Roman engineering, but a blank canvas awaiting a new kind of celestial story, one written not in marble and sunlight, but in colored glass and sacred geometry. The Roman dome was a model of the cosmos, but the Byzantines sought to dissolve the very walls between heaven and earth. In Constantinople, inside the immense Hagia Sophia, that engineering ambition reached a mystical zenith. The central dome does not appear to rest on solid masonry. Instead, it floats, suspended on a ring of 40 windows that pour daylight into the cavernous space below. This was the architectural illusion of a lifetime. The solid stone of the Roman Pantheon ceiling had been transformed into a circle of radiant light, a perfect symbol of the Christian firmament, the dwelling place of God. It was no longer a representation of the sky. It was an invitation to step into its luminous presence. This celestial vision was completed by a second revolutionary art form, the mosaic. Every curved surface, every arch and apse became a skin of glittering glass and gold. This was not decoration in any ordinary sense. It was a meticulously planned theological map written in light. The tiny cubes of glass or tesserae were set at slight angles to catch and scatter the beams from those high windows. The gold leaf backgrounds did not simply depict heavenly light. They generated it, shimmering and alive with every flicker of a candle or shift in the sun. The architecture became a dynamic instrument for conducting divine illumination. The arrangement of the figures within this golden haze was itself a cosmic diagram. Christ Pantocrator, the ruler of all, gazed down from the summit of the main dome, the ultimate celestial authority. Below him, in descending order of sacred hierarchy, were the Virgin Mary, the angels, the saints, and the prophets. This vertical order mirrored the very structure of the medieval universe, from the empyrean heaven down to the earthly realm. To stand in that space was to physically occupy your place within a vast, sacred cosmology. The art and architecture performed a single function: to make the invisible visible, to translate the abstract concept of a celestial court into a sensory, overwhelming reality. Even the choice of colors held cosmic meaning. The deep blue of a saint's robe might recall the night sky, while the brilliant white of an angel's wings echoed the pure light of the stars. This was an immersive environment designed for awe, a deliberate short-circuiting of the rational mind to produce a feeling of direct communion. The goal was transcendence. By bathing the worshipper in reflected celestial brilliance, the Byzantine Church taught that heaven was not a distant place, but a state of luminous order accessible through sacred geometry and sanctified light. This profound synthesis, where architecture frames the light and art becomes the light, would travel west. It carried with it a powerful idea that a building could be a portal, and that the most humble materials, glass and stone, could be arranged to capture a fragment of the eternal. This obsession with divine light would find its next, and perhaps most spectacular, expression not in the round domes of the East, but in the soaring vertical lines of the Gothic North. The shimmering gold of Byzantium sought to capture heaven's light, but to build a bridge to that light, you must first know precisely where to point it. This brings us to the first and most sacred principle of cosmic architecture: orientation. Before a foundation stone was laid, before a wall was raised, the builders performed a quiet, profound ritual. They looked to the sky to find true north, to mark the path of the sun, to establish an axis that would forever link their creation to the turning of the cosmos. This was not a matter of convenience. It was the essential first commandment of sacred building. Consider the ancient passage tomb of Newgrange, where a single beam of winter solstice sunrise was engineered with pinpoint accuracy. That alignment was the very reason for its existence. Across the world, the same principle guided the construction of mosques, where the Qibla wall must face the holy city of Mecca. For centuries, Muslim astronomers used sophisticated celestial navigation, observing the stars to calculate that sacred direction from any point on Earth. The architecture itself became a compass needle, eternally pointing the faithful toward spiritual center. In medieval Europe, this principle crystallized into a universal rule for Christian churches. They were almost invariably built on an east-west axis, with a high altar placed at the eastern end. Why this specific orientation? It was a direct symbolic link to the resurrection. The altar, the holiest point in the building, represented the tomb of Christ. By aligning it with the east, the direction of the rising sun, the architects ensured that on the most important morning of the Christian year, Easter Sunday, the dawn would stream directly through the windows behind the altar. The first light of day would fall upon the symbolic empty tomb, dramatically reenacting the moment of resurrection for the entire congregation. every sunrise thereafter became a smaller echo of that miracle, a daily reaffirmation woven into the very stones. The very word we use to orient a building or a map comes from this practice, from turning toward the Orients, the East. This act of orientation was far more than a technical step. It was a declaration. It said that human endeavor must begin by acknowledging a greater celestial order. It physically rooted a community's place of worship within the cosmic drama, making the church not just a building under the sky, but an active participant in its cycles. Before a single saint was carved or a window stained, the heavens had already written the first line of the architectural plan. This sacred direction established the foundational rhythm, the steady heartbeat, upon which all the other layers of celestial symbolism would be built. Orientation gave the cathedral its sacred direction, but its soul was written in geometry. The second principle, proportion, was the silent language through which medieval masons believed they could speak the very mathematics of God. In their worldview, the Creator had not fashioned a random universe. He had built it with a compass and a square according to perfect, eternal ratios. A cathedral, therefore, could not be merely functional or even beautiful. It had to be a mirror of this divine blueprint, a microcosm of the orderly cosmos. The tools of the trade were humble, a pair of dividers and a carpenter's square, but in the hands of a master mason they became instruments of revelation. With them he would lay out the ground plan, not with arbitrary measurements, but by inscribing sacred shapes into the earth. The square symbolizing the earthly realm and the circle, representing the perfection of heaven, were combined and subdivided to generate every dimension of the building. Two ratios were held in particular reverence: the golden section, a proportion where a whole line relates to its larger part as the larger part relates to the smaller, was seen as the formula for organic beauty and growth found in seashells and plant spirals. The square root of 2, derived from the diagonal of a square, was the ratio of dynamic stability. These were not just numbers, they were the harmonic intervals in the music of the spheres, the same mathematical relationships thought to govern the distances between the planets as they sang their silent orbits. This belief was poured directly into stone. The width of the nave might be set by one circle, its height determined by the rotation of a square. The spacing of columns, the rise of an arch, the layout of the vaults overhead, all were locked into this interlocking web of geometry. Walking down the aisle, you are moving through a crystallized equation. This was far more than an aesthetic choice. It was a profound theological statement. A perfectly proportioned building did not just please the eye. It testified to a rational, benevolent creator and humanity's God-given ability to comprehend his laws. It was an act of piety in stone. Nowhere is this celestial geometry more breathtakingly visible than in the great rose window. That radiant wheel of stained glass is not a random floral pattern. It is a complex mandala of circles and intersecting arcs, a frozen snapshot of the mason's compass work. The tracery of stone that holds the glass is a web of sacred geometry made visible, a pattern the builders believed was echoed in the arrangement of stars and the orbits of planets. Light streaming through that window did not just illuminate the church, it projected a fragment of the cosmic order onto the congregation below. The cathedral, through its proportions, became a bridge between the measurable world and the divine mind. A silent sermon declaring that truth, beauty, and holiness were all expressions of the same eternal mathematics. The silent geometry of the stones held a hidden language of numbers. This is the third principle, symbolic numerology, where digits were far more than quantities. They were cosmic code carrying profound astronomical and theological meaning. To the medieval mind, numbers were the very building blocks of creation, the tools God used to bring order from chaos. A cathedral's design was therefore saturated with numerical symbolism, each digit a key to a deeper layer of sacred truth. Take the number 12. In a Christian context, it immediately calls to mind the 12 apostles, the foundation stones of the church. but this number resonated far beyond theology. It also represented the 12 months of the solar year and the 12 signs of the zodiac encircling the heavens. A row of 12 statues along the nave was not just a gallery of saints. It was a representation of the apostolic foundation, supporting a structure that also encompassed the complete cycle of time and the full circle of the sky. The architecture collapsed these concepts into a single, powerful symbol. Then there is the number 7, perhaps the most sacred number of all. It recalled the 7 days of creation, but also the 7 classical planets visible to the naked eye, the wandering gods of the old sky. This number permeates the cathedral. You find it in the depiction of the 7 sacraments across a stained glass window, in the 7 bays of a chapel, or the 7 steps leading to a raised choir. Each repetition was a reminder that the spiritual journey mirrored the celestial order, that the rituals of the church were as fundamental to life as the planets were to the cosmos. This encoding was deliberate and precise. The count of windows in an apse, the pillars supporting a vault, even the number of steps on a spiral staircase, these were rarely arbitrary. They were carefully chosen to weave this numerical sermon into the physical experience of the space. A pilgrim moving through the cathedral was thus undertaking a multi-layered journey. Physically, they walked from the west door, symbolizing the setting sun and mortal life, toward the east and the altar of resurrection. But symbolically, they were also traveling through the cycle of the year, marked by the 12, and ascending through the 7 planetary spheres toward the empyrean heaven. Every number underfoot and overhead was a signpost on this spiritual map. This symbolic numerology transformed the building into a kind of interactive textbook. You did not need to read Latin to understand its lessons. You simply needed to walk and count. The architecture itself taught that the microcosm of human faith and the macrocosm of God's universe were built from the same divine integers, that the harmony of the heavens was echoed in the rhythm of prayer and the measured beauty of stone. A Gothic cathedral is a stone encyclopedia of the sky. It stands as the ultimate synthesis where art, architecture, and astronomy are woven into a single, breathtaking tapestry of faith and knowledge. Its design is a deliberate act of cosmic cartography. The soaring verticality of the spires and vaults pulls your gaze and your spirit inexorably upward, a physical aspiration toward the heavens. Yet at your feet, the ground plan often forms the shape of a cross, orienting you within a vast cosmic Christian map. Your body stands at the intersection of the earthly and the divine, a living point in a sacred geometry. This was a building designed to be read, a communal book written in light and stone for a populace that could not read words. Every element served a dual purpose, both practical and profoundly symbolic. The revolutionary flying buttresses, those graceful stone arms reaching out from the walls, were brilliant engineering solutions. They bore the weight of the massive roof, allowing the walls themselves to become skeletons of stone tracery filled with nothing but glass. And it was through that glass that the true magic happened. The stained glass windows were not merely colorful decorations. They were luminous pages of that stone encyclopedia. In their radiant panels, biblical saints and prophets shared space with the zodiac signs and the labors of the months. Here was Samson pushing apart pillars right beside the constellation of Gemini, the twins. There, the Virgin Mary might be framed by the sign of Virgo, while the harvesting scenes of September were depicted below. This was not a confusion of sacred and secular. It was a declaration that the divine story and the natural world were one continuous narrative. The turning of the celestial wheel, marked by the zodiac, was directly linked to the agricultural cycle of planting and harvest, which in turn was framed by the liturgical calendar of feast days and fasts. The window fused them all into a single vision of a God-ordered universe. To walk through the nave was to move through time itself, through the seasons of the earth and the stories of salvation, all illuminated by the actual sun tracking its path across the sky. The very light that brought the glass to life was the subject of its depiction. This made the complex, invisible mechanics of the cosmos visible and tangible in daily life. A farmer looking up at the window of the September harvest knew his place not just in the field, but in a divine schedule that stretched from the soil to the stars. The cathedral was a teaching machine of sublime elegance, explaining faith, time, and the natural world as a single, harmonious system. It offered a complete worldview where every individual, every season, and every star had a designated place in a beautiful, intelligible, and sacred order. High on the western wall, the great rose window catches the last light of the dying day. As the sun sinks toward the horizon, it ignites this colossal wheel of glass into a furnace of crimson, sapphire, and gold, a final, glorious shout of color before night falls. This is no mere window. It is the cathedral's crown jewel and its most sophisticated cosmological diagram. To stand before it is to gaze into a stained glass model of the entire medieval universe. Its very form is a revelation. The intricate stone tracery that holds the glass is not random lacework. Those radiating spokes and concentric circles are the visible bones of sacred geometry, the master mason's compass work frozen in stone. They mimic the radiating rays of the sun and the perfect, turning structure of a celestial wheel. This is architecture aspiring to the condition of a machine, a static engine designed to frame the dynamic light of the cosmos. Within this luminous wheel, the stories unfold in ordered rings. At the very center, you might find Christ in majesty, the divine Son at the heart of all creation. Radiating outward, the next circle could hold the 12 apostles or the 12 signs of the zodiac, binding sacred history to the eternal cycle of the year. Further out, panels might depict the labors of the months, the virtues battling vices, or scenes of the Last Judgment, organizing human time, morality, and ultimate destiny into a single, comprehensible diagram. The entire window is a map of reality, from the central, unchanging truth of God to the ever-turning wheel of creation and the moral choices of earthly life. Its placement on the west facade is profoundly deliberate. The west is the direction of the setting sun, symbolically the end of time, the location of the final judgment in Christian thought. Each evening, as the sun sets, it pours its light directly through this window of judgment and cosmic order, setting the interior ablaze. For the medieval worshipper, this was a daily enacted parable. The fading earthly light was transformed into a spectacular explosion of divine color and narrative, a promise that the end of things was not darkness, but a glorious transformation. The rose window fused artistic genius, engineering audacity, and deep celestial symbolism into one breathtaking object. It was the peak of the medieval quest to build a heaven of light here on earth, a permanent, radiant proof that human hands could craft a worthy mirror for the mind of God. This obsession with capturing and directing light would not end with stone and glass, however, as the same celestial principles began to guide the layout of spaces meant not for worship but for knowledge and power. Look up from the radiant geometry of the rose window, and your gaze might meet a different kind of face gazing back. Carved into the capitals of columns, hidden in the shadows of choir stalls, often beside the stern saints and solemn prophets, is a figure of wild, sprouting life. The Green Man, a human face woven from oak leaves, acorns, and hawthorn, seems to whisper a secret from the forest directly onto the cathedral wall. This is no random decorative whim. Amidst the stone hymns to eternity, the Green Man is the architectural breath of the cyclical earth. He is the foliate head, a face made of leaves, sometimes calm and sleeping, sometimes wide-mouthed and disgorging a torrent of vine. His presence is a profound clue, revealing that the cathedral's cosmic vision was not limited to the distant stars. It was equally rooted in the life-giving solar force that governed the world right outside its doors. This mysterious motif, often mistaken for a pagan holdover, is in fact a brilliant piece of theological and astronomical synthesis. He embodies the regenerative power of nature, a power that medieval people understood was governed by an unbreakable celestial clock. The sun's journey along the ecliptic, marked so precisely by the orientation of the building itself, dictated the entire vegetative cycle he represents. His leafy hair is the spring canopy, his fruit the autumn harvest, his dormant, wood-grained face the stillness of winter. By carving him into the sacred stone, the Church was performing a deliberate act of incorporation. It was acknowledging that the eternal, linear time of salvation history existed alongside, and indeed encompassed, the cyclical, seasonal time of the natural world. The Green Man visually ties the divine narrative inside the Church to the agricultural reality of the fields beyond. He is a reminder that the same sun whose solstice light was engineered to flood the altar also caused the crops to grow, the vines to climb, and the forests to bloom. He signifies that the celestial connection was not an abstract philosophy, but a tangible, life-sustaining force. So while the rose window maps the heavens, the Green Man roots that map in the soil. He transforms the cathedral from a portal to the afterlife into a celebration of the created world, a stone testament to the belief that the God who ordered the planets also authored the oak leaf. In his silent, leafy gaze, art, architecture, and astronomy converge on the most human scale, connecting the mystery of the cosmos to the simple, vital miracle of a sprouting seed. The cycle of the seasons was not a quiet background to medieval life. It was the very rhythm of existence, and the cathedral gave it a permanent, glorious face. Scrolling along the stone arches of a great portal or glowing in panels of stained glass, you find one of the most practical and profound artworks of the age, the labors of the months. This is a visual almanac, a farmer's calendar carved in stone for eternity. Each month is personified not by a god or a saint, but by a specific, necessary task. You see a figure warming their hands by a fire for January, pruning vines in March, cutting hay in June, harvesting golden wheat in August, and in November, the solemn task of slaughtering a pig to provide food for the winter. These were not quaint scenes of rustic life. They were vital instructions, a communal memory of when to plant, when to reap, and when to prepare for the cold. This art taught an illiterate populace the relentless, beautiful timing of the year, but the designers never left these earthly labors alone. Almost without exception, each monthly scene is paired with its corresponding zodiac sign. The sower scattering seed in October stands beside the symbol of Scorpio. The harvest of August is framed by the figure of Virgo. This pairing is the crucial key. It creates a direct visual equation. On one side, human labor, the work of hands in soil. On the other, the sun's immutable passage through a specific constellation, an astronomical fact. The architecture frames this equation, holding both halves in perfect, sacred balance. The message was unmistakable. Your sweat in the field was not separate from the grand motion of the heavens. It was a direct consequence of it. The sun, by entering the constellation of Taurus, signaled the time to plow. Its journey into Leo brought the heat that ripened the grain. This was the medieval world you made visible. It visualized a universe where human activity was inseparably woven into the fabric of the cosmos. There was no division between sacred and secular, between the church and the field. The same divine intelligence that ordered the stars also ordained the agricultural cycle. By carving and glazing this calendar onto the house of God, the church was sanctifying daily life. It was saying that the peasant's toil was part of the same divine plan as the angel's song. The cathedral, therefore, became more than a place for Sunday prayer. It was the town's clock, its calendar, and its almanac, all synchronized to the celestial clockwork. To see the labor for November depicted beside the sign of Sagittarius was to understand your place within a vast, intelligent system. You were a participant in a cosmic dance, your hands guided by the light of distant stars, your yearly struggle framed within an architecture that reached for heaven itself. Carved beside a solemn apostle, a figure drives a golden chariot across the stone sky. This is Sol, the personified sun, his radiant face beaming from the sacred facade of Chartres Cathedral. To modern eyes, his presence alongside saints and prophets can feel startling, even contradictory. How could a symbol so clearly borrowed from ancient pagan astronomy find a home on the walls of a great Christian church? This apparent paradox dissolves when we enter the medieval mind. For the scholars and artists of that age, the sun and moon, the planets and zodiac constellations were not gods to be worshipped. They were magnificent creations to be studied, the most brilliant pages in what they called the Book of Nature. This was the second great text of divine revelation, written not in words but in the ordered motion of light across the void. The zodiac signs were not seen as pagan idols, but as the beautiful, God-appointed markers of the celestial calendar. Depicting them in sacred art was an act of celebration, not of worship. It demonstrated the breathtaking completeness of God's dominion. He ruled not just over the human soul, but over the entire cosmic machinery, from the highest sphere of the fixed stars down to the changing, sublunary world of seasons, tides, and growth. By carving Sol in his chariot and Luna with her crescent, the architects were making a profound theological statement. They were showing that the Christian God was the author of all things, the master engineer behind the very astronomical forces that earlier cultures had personified. This artistic incorporation represents a brilliant act of intellectual synthesis, often called the baptism of ancient knowledge. The Church, rather than rejecting the sophisticated astronomy of the Greeks, Romans, and Arabs, chose to sanctify it. They stripped the planetary figures of their divine status and repurposed them as celestial administrators, powerful but created beings operating under God's ultimate command. Their images on a cathedral served as a visual encyclopedia of the cosmos, illustrating the layered structure of reality that medieval science described. This provided worshippers with a complete, awe-inspiring picture of a universe under singular, benevolent control. To stand before that facade was to see a map of existence itself, where scripture, nature, and celestial motion were all chapters in the same divine story. The stone saints spoke of grace and salvation, while the golden sun above them spoke of the orderly, beautiful means by which that grace sustained the physical world. There was no contradiction, only a magnificent, all-encompassing harmony. Jerusalem is a perfect circle at the very heart of the world. This is the vision presented by the Hereford Mappa Mundi, a colossal map drawn on a single sheet of vellum that is not a guide for travelers, but an architectural blueprint for all of creation. It functions as a spiritual compass, a diagram that structures space, time, and belief into one unified system. The map is round, mirroring the shape of the cosmos itself, and at its exact center sits the holy city, the symbolic navel of the world. This is not geographical accuracy as we understand it, but a profound statement of theological geography. Every continent, every river, every mythical creature is arranged not by physical distance, but by its sacred significance in the Christian story. At the top, which is east on these maps, you find the Garden of Eden, a walled circle representing paradise, the beginning of human time. At the very bottom lies the end of days. The map is not a snapshot, it is a narrative. You are looking at the entire arc of salvation history from creation to apocalypse, laid out in a single, breathtaking image. Surrounding the circular earth is a great ocean, and beyond that, the architectural framing of the cosmos completes the picture. Often, personifications of the 12 winds blow from the edges, and the 12 signs of the zodiac form a celestial ring. This is the crucial synthesis. The earthly realm, with Jerusalem at its core, is shown to be completely enveloped and influenced by the astronomical forces above. The map visually declares that the rhythms of the winds and the passage of the sun through the zodiac are the very mechanisms that govern life within the central circle. To study the Mappa Mundi is to witness the medieval worldview in its most complete artistic form. It does not separate disciplines. Cartography, art, theology, and cosmology are fused into a single instructional masterpiece. A strange beast labeled in a distant land teaches natural history. A depiction of the pharaoh's army drowning in the Red Sea reinforces biblical history. The zodiacal ring affirms the scientific understanding of the heavens. All of it coexists to answer the most important questions: where are we, and what is our purpose within God's grand design? These maps were not meant to guide a journey across land, but a journey of the soul. They architecturally structured a universe of meaning, placing humanity in a known, ordered, and divinely centered cosmos, where every star above and every city below had its designated place in a beautiful, intelligible story. A perfect circle on a map places humanity at the center, but a different tradition sought to dissolve the self into the infinite. In the Islamic world, from the deserts of Arabia to the courts of Samarkand, the synthesis of art, architecture, and astronomy achieved a breathtaking purity of form. Here, the cosmos was understood not through figurative stories of gods and heroes, but as a direct manifestation of divine intellect, a universe written in the sacred language of geometry and number. This vision produced spaces where every line, every curve, and every angle whispers of celestial order. Step inside the courtyard of a medieval mosque and look up. The dome overhead is often a complex universe of muqarnas, those stunning honeycomb or stalactite vaults. This is not mere ornament. Each tiny, faceted niche reflects and multiplies light, creating the scintillating effect of a starry firmament frozen in plaster or tile. To stand beneath it is to stand under a geometric sky, a man-made constellation that mirrors the perfect, repeating patterns believed to underlie all of creation. This architectural astronomy was driven by a profound practical need: the sacred direction of prayer. The mihrab, the niche in every mosque that indicates the Qibla toward Mecca, is the spiritual and architectural heart of the building. Determining this direction accurately from thousands of miles away was one of the greatest scientific challenges of the age. It was solved by astronomers and mathematicians who turned the night sky into a global compass. They developed complex trigonometric tables and observational instruments to calculate the Qibla with astonishing precision, making each mosque a node in a vast, spiritually connected network aligned by the stars. This scientific rigor blossomed into institutions like the Ulugh Beg Observatory in Samarkand, where a colossal, earth-bound sextant carved into a hillside allowed scholars to map the heavens with unprecedented accuracy. Their star catalogues refined the very data that would later fuel the European Renaissance, but this knowledge always returned to artistic expression. Since figurative imagery was avoided in sacred spaces, the entire vocabulary of the cosmos became abstract. Calligraphic bands of Quranic verse often describing the heavens, the orbits of the sun and moon, and the perfection of creation snake across walls and arches. These words from the divine are woven into interlacing geometric patterns, infinite star polygons and tessellations that have no beginning and no end. This is the key. The repeating, expanding patterns on a wall or a carpet are a direct meditation on infinity, a visual representation of a universe without center or edge, forever unfolding from a single divine source. In this tradition, art and architecture do not depict the cosmos, they perform its mathematics. The mosque itself becomes an instrument for contemplation, using celestial precision to orient the body and sublime geometry to expand the mind toward the transcendent. It is a different dialect in humanity's ongoing conversation with the sky, one that speaks in the clean, eternal lines of the compass and the rule, proving that the deepest cosmic truths can be written without a single image, in the silent, beautiful language of shape and light. The monastery bell tolls in the deep of night, calling the brothers from their sleep to the first prayer of the day. This was not a random alarm, but a note in a celestial symphony. Within the high walls of a medieval monastery, the connection between heaven and earth was not a distant theory. It was the relentless, practical rhythm of existence. The entire monastic life was structured around the 8 canonical hours, from matins in the dark before dawn to compline at nightfall. This schedule, the divine office, was a sacred choreography written by the sun and stars. To follow it was to synchronize the human soul with the cosmic clock. The architecture of the monastery itself was engineered to make this possible. In the quiet cloister garden, a simple sundial carved into a pillar marked the daylight hours with quiet precision. More subtly, the church building became a colossal timepiece. Master builders would position specific windows, often high in the eastern apse, so that a single spear of sunlight would travel across the stone floor, touching a certain carved mark or illuminating a particular step at the exact moment of the midday office. The light itself became the sacristan, ringing a silent, visual bell. This integration extended to the most precious objects within their walls, the illuminated manuscripts. A psalter or book of hours was not just a text, it was a portable observatory. Its calendar pages were dense with astronomical data, noting the rising and setting of key stars, the phases of the moon, and the solar feast days. A monk turning these pages was consulting the same celestial data that governed when he planted the abbey's herbs and when he sang his vespers. The entire monastic complex, therefore, from its aligned church to its sundial cloister to its painted manuscripts, functioned as a unified horologium, a spiritual timekeeping device. This was astronomy stripped of all abstraction, woven directly into the breath and bone of daily life. It shaped when the community worked, when it ate, when it studied, and when it prayed. The rhythm of the cosmos was not just observed, it was lived, a constant, gentle reminder that every hour was a gift from the orderly mind of the Creator, and every prayer was an echo of the turning spheres. A ship captain in a storm-tossed sea has no stone circles to guide him, only the tilt of the deck and the howl of the wind. His survival, and the survival of all aboard, depends on a single, fixed point in the whirling darkness, the North Star. This was not abstract knowledge, it was a matter of life and loss, and that urgent, practical relationship with the heavens bled directly into the art and architecture of coastal communities. You can see it in the Portolan charts, those breathtakingly beautiful navigational maps from the medieval and Renaissance periods. They are masterpieces of practical art, drawn on vellum with coastlines sketched in startling detail. But overlaid on this geography is a web of art itself, a spider web of room lines radiating out from central windroses. These lines are not random, they are compass bearings, and at the heart of those ornate roses often sits a star, a symbolic anchor for the entire navigational system. The map was a tool, but it was also an object of reverence, a painted prayer for safe passage where art and astronomy became inseparable. This devotion moved from the chart table directly onto the walls of the church. In port cities from Venice to Bristol, you will find votive paintings left by grateful sailors or their families. These are not generic religious scenes. They depict specific ships in peril, waves crashing over the decks with the crew in desperate prayer, and almost always in a corner of the sky, the artist has carefully painted the North Star or the familiar shape of the Big Dipper pointing toward it. The message is profound. The painting thanks God for salvation, but it explicitly acknowledges that the mechanism of that salvation was celestial. The star that guided the ship home is presented as an instrument of divine grace, a holy beacon. The architecture of these maritime churches often echoes this theme. In some, the vaulted ceiling above the nave is not a plain stone canopy, but a deep blue firmament dotted with golden stars. To sit in a pew was to sit under a protective, sacred sky, a permanent reminder that the same God who held the stars in place held the sailor on the deep. This was astronomy in its most visceral form, transformed from a science of observation into a language of gratitude and a plea for protection. It linked the immense, impersonal cosmos directly to the trembling hands of an individual at the helm, binding faith, survival, and the celestial guide into a single, enduring work of art. The monastery's measured hours gave way to a more public spectacle of time. In the late medieval town square, a new marvel crowned the civic tower, a machine that made the music of the spheres audible and visible to all. The astronomical clock was the ultimate mechanical synthesis, where art, architecture, and astronomy were fused into a single, whirring, chiming masterpiece. These were not mere timepieces, they were architectural features in their own right, built directly into the stone fabric of a cathedral or town hall, becoming the beating heart of the community. Look at the great clock in Prague or the one gracing the facade of Wells Cathedral. They are artistic wonders alive with moving sculptures. On the hour, a procession of carved apostles might circle past a window, a gilded sun chariot advances, and a skeleton representing mortality tolls its bell. This is theater, a moral play performed by automata. Yet beneath this artistry lies a profound scientific engine. The clock's multiple dials and rotating rings display cosmic time itself. One hand tracks the sun, another the phases of the moon. A painted zodiac wheel turns with the year, and sometimes intricate planetary spheres show the wanderers in their orbits according to the ancient Ptolemaic system. This was a staggering intellectual achievement. It took the complex, abstract model of the universe, understood only by scholars, and made it visibly mechanical and public. For the townspeople gathering below, the clock taught a revolutionary lesson. The cosmos was not a mysterious, capricious realm. It operated with the predictable, interlocking precision of the very gears and escapements they could hear ticking above them. The universe was a clockwork masterpiece. This idea pointed to a breathtaking theological conclusion. If the cosmos was a clock, then there must be a divine clockmaker who had wound it into motion. The astronomical clock, therefore, was more than a civic utility. It was a tangible sermon, a physical proof of a rational, orderly creator whose grand design could be understood, measured, and even replicated by human ingenuity. It placed the community, in its daily bustle, directly under the visible, moving map of a heaven that ran like perfect clockwork, a daily reassurance that chaos had no place in the grand design. But beneath the soaring arches of the cathedral and the precise gears of the town clock, a parallel universe of knowledge hummed in secret. A different kind of scholar worked by candlelight, their pages illuminated not with saints, but with cryptic symbols of dragons, suns, and intertwined planets. This was the world of Hermeticism and alchemy, where the connection between art, architecture, and astronomy was not for public teaching, but for personal transformation. Here, the cosmos was not just a map to be read, but a web of hidden energies to be harnessed. Alchemical manuscripts are masterpieces of esoteric art, dense with symbolic diagrams that form a secret celestial code. In these intricate illustrations, the 7 classical planets are directly linked to the 7 base metals. The red of Mars governs iron, the silver of the moon rules over silver, and the golden sun, of course, presides over gold. But this was never merely about turning lead into physical gold. It was a spiritual metaphor. The alchemical process, from blackening to whitening to the final radiant red, was a map of the soul's purification, a journey mirrored by the soul's ascent through the planetary spheres. The art itself was the instruction manual, using celestial imagery to chart an inner, psychological astronomy. This secret philosophy did not stay confined to parchment. Scholars like Francis Yates have suggested it bled into the very stones of the Renaissance. Consider the sprawling gardens of the Villa d'Este at Tivoli, a symphony of fountains and terraces built in the 16th century. Its design is not random. Each fountain, each statue, each winding path is thought to be aligned with a specific planet. The Avenue of the 100 Fountains might channel the fluid, changeable nature of the moon, while a powerful central water feature could resonate with the strength of the sun. The garden becomes a three-dimensional talisman, an architectural attempt to capture and concentrate the specific influences or virtues believed to emanate from each celestial body. It was a machine for harmonizing the human spirit with the cosmos. This reveals a profound and often overlooked layer in our story. The drive to connect with the stars was not solely about communal ritual or public calendar keeping. For some, it was a deeply private quest for gnosis, for direct, experiential knowledge of the universe's hidden laws. In this view, art and architecture became alchemical vessels themselves. The precise proportions of a chapel, the alignment of a private study window, or the symbolic statues in a garden could be tuned, like a musical instrument, to resonate with a particular planetary frequency. The goal was to create a space where the microcosm of the self could achieve perfect sympathy with the macrocosm of the heavens, accelerating enlightenment or attracting celestial aid. This hermetic layer shows the connection at its most intimate and ambitious, transforming silent stone and pigment into an active technology for navigating the soul by the stars. A clockwork cosmos still revolves around a divine center, but what if that center was no longer a holy city on a map, but the very eye of the observer? The medieval synthesis did not vanish. It was refocused through a new lens, one that placed the human viewer at the vanishing point of all creation. The Renaissance invention of linear perspective was far more than an artistic trick. It was a profound astronomical concept made manifest on canvas and in stone. When Filippo Brunelleschi demonstrated his revolutionary method in Florence, he did so by painting the baptistery as seen from the cathedral door, using a mirror to prove its accuracy. This was not mere depiction, it was a mathematical projection, a way of mapping three-dimensional reality onto a two-dimensional plane with the same geometric rigor one might use to chart the positions of planets. The picture plane became a window, and the converging lines of architecture all led to a single, fixed point in infinity, a man-made pole star around which the entire visual universe now orbited. This new tool allowed artists to stage celestial events with breathtaking realism. The Star of Bethlehem was no longer just a symbolic gold disk in the sky. In paintings by artists like Giotto and later masters, it became a brilliant, streaking comet, its tail rendered with observational detail that would have satisfied any astronomer, its light casting genuine shadows on the astonished faces of shepherds below. The heavens were brought down to earth not through symbolism but through convincing illusion, making the divine moment feel immediate, tangible, and real. This shift was architectural as well. Brunelleschi, the same mind that cracked the code of perspective, tackled the greatest architectural puzzle in Florence, the unfinished dome of the cathedral. His solution was a masterpiece of engineering that married classical Roman proportions with a deep understanding of physical forces, a structure that seemed to float above the city like a second sky. His designs for churches like San Lorenzo applied perspective's principles to interior space, using columns and arches to create rhythmic, harmonious vistas that guided the eye and the spirit toward the altar with a new, human-scaled clarity. The cosmos was being recreated not as a distant allegory, but as an experiential space you could logically enter. This marks the pivotal evolution from symbolic to representational integration. Art and architecture still sought to portray an ordered universe, but now they used the fresh tools of observational astronomy and rigorous mathematics to build that order around the individual. The human being, standing at that singular vanishing point, became the new center of a cosmos that was still beautifully, intelligently designed, but now designed to be seen, measured, and believed from one very specific, very human point of view. The west facade of Chartres Cathedral is a stone encyclopedia open to the sky. Here, carved with breathtaking clarity around the royal portal, the zodiac signs stand shoulder to shoulder with the labors of the months. You see Gemini, the twins, gazing out beside a scene of shearing sheep for June. Virgo holds her stalk of wheat as a farmer threshes the August harvest. This pairing is not a decorative afterthought. It is the foundational thesis of the entire building, written in granite for all to see. It declares that human toil and celestial motion are two verses of the same divine hymn. The cathedral itself is the binding that holds this book together, a comprehensive blueprint where every artistic choice, from the grandest sculpture to the smallest piece of glass, serves this unified cosmic vision. Beneath your feet, as you walk the nave, another profound puzzle is laid into the stone floor. The great labyrinth, a winding path of dark and light stone that leads on a single, circuitous route to a central rosette. While its purpose for meditation is clear, many scholars see a deeper, celestial symbolism. Its 11 concentric circles may mirror the medieval model of the cosmos, with its nested planetary spheres. To walk its path is to undertake a symbolic journey inward, a pilgrimage of the spirit mirroring the soul's passage through the layered heavens toward a divine center. It transforms the very floor into a map of cosmic ascent. This celestial narrative rises from the floor into a symphony of colored light. The stained glass of Chartres is legendary, and the famous blue Virgin window in the south aisle offers a masterclass in symbolic astronomy. The dominant deep blue of the Virgin's robe is not merely a beautiful color. In medieval symbolic language, blue represented the vault of heaven, constancy, and divine truth. She is literally clothed in the celestial firmament. Surrounding her, the intricate reds, greens, and yellows of the narrative panels are not random. Each hue was chosen for its symbolic weight, with red often signifying the fire of divine love or martyrdom, and green representing the vitality of faith and the natural world sustained by the heavens. The light passing through this glass does more than illuminate, it theologizes, bathing the space in a physical manifestation of sacred concepts derived from an ordered cosmos. This order is rooted in the silent, invisible mathematics of the stones. The cathedral's entire layout is an exercise in sacred geometry. The proportions of the nave, the crossing, and the choir are governed by ratios like the square root of 2 and the golden section, the same ratios believed to underpin the harmony of the universe. If you could unfold the building's plan, you would find it generated from a series of overlapping circles and squares, the compass work of the master mason seeking to replicate divine creation on earth. The height of the vaults, the spacing of the pillars, even the dimensions of the window tracery, all whisper this same geometric sermon, telling you that the structure around you is a sibling to the distant stars, built from the same eternal principles. To study Chartres holistically is to witness the ultimate synthesis. The sculpture on the facade teaches the cosmic calendar. The labyrinth on the floor maps the spiritual journey. The geometry in the plan echoes universal mathematics. The stained glass translates celestial light into sacred story. There is no separation. Every decision, from the quarry to the glazier's furnace, was an opportunity to embed another layer of meaning. This was not art for art's sake or architecture for shelter alone. It was a total work of art, a meticulously crafted environment designed to be a machine for transcendence. It used every available medium to guide the worshipper, step by step, symbol by symbol, from the earthly time of the harvest fields outside its doors, up through the celestial spheres represented in its glass and stone, toward the eternal, timeless heaven its spire seems to pierce. Chartres does not just contain symbolism, it performs it, offering a complete, walkable model of a universe where every detail is connected, meaningful, and radiantly alive with purpose. But a clockwork cosmos, no matter how beautiful, still needs a clockmaker. The stunning astronomical mechanisms of the late medieval world pointed toward a divine intelligence behind the gears, a comforting conclusion that kept humanity at the heart of a meaningful drama. Then, in the quiet of a Polish study, Nicolaus Copernicus rearranged the entire stage. His radical proposition that the Earth was not the fixed center of all things but a planet orbiting the Sun did more than correct a scientific error. It initiated a slow, profound unraveling of the very fabric of that integrated worldview. The cosmos was no longer a nested set of symbolic spheres with moral purpose, designed around human destiny. It was becoming a vast, impersonal machine, operating by physical laws that could be described with mathematics, independent of any human story or sacred meaning. This was the Copernican revolution, and its shockwaves would eventually reach every carved pillar and painted vault. Science began to separate itself from its ancient partners, art and architecture. The telescope, not the rose window, became the primary instrument for understanding the heavens. Figures like Galileo and Kepler mapped the elliptical orbits of planets with breathtaking precision, but they did so through numbers and observations, not through symbolic geometry meant to inspire worship. The universe was becoming an object of study, something to be analyzed from the outside, rather than a sacred order to be participated in from within. This new, objective gaze was powerful, but it came with a cost. The role of the artist and the architect as essential mediators of cosmic knowledge began to fade. Why carve a complex zodiac into a cathedral facade when an almanac or a printed star chart could tell you the planetary positions with greater accuracy? The building's function shifted. It was no longer required to be an encyclopedia of the sky. You can see this separation take physical form. Compare the Gothic cathedral, saturated with celestial symbolism in every detail, to a grand building from the 18th century. A palace or a civic hall from the Age of Enlightenment is often a masterpiece of balance, proportion, and aesthetic beauty, but its symbolism, if present at all, is typically secular references to civic virtue, historical events, or abstract ideals. The ceilings might be painted with allegorical figures of justice or liberty, not with the Virgin Mary framed by the constellations. The architecture speaks to human reason and social order, not to a divine cosmic order. The connection to the astronomical had been severed. The building was no longer a bridge between earth and heaven, but a testament to human achievement here on the ground. Art followed a similar path. As the cosmos became disenchanted, stripped of its symbolic and spiritual layers, the focus of painting turned inward to the human sphere. Portraiture flourished, capturing the individual psyche. Genre scenes depicted the everyday life of markets and homes. Even landscapes, while beautiful, were often studies of light and atmosphere, not diagrams of a living, ensouled universe. The stars, when they appeared, were decorative backdrop, not active characters in the narrative. The Enlightenment prized reason, empiricism, and the separation of disciplines. This was a world of clarity and progress, but it was also a world where meaning, beauty, and cosmic truth were no longer woven into a single, glorious tapestry. They were placed in separate rooms, science in the laboratory, beauty in the salon, and meaning in the private realm of philosophy or faith. Understanding this great shift is not about judging one era as superior to another. The advances born from this separation gave us modern medicine, technology, and our profound understanding of the physical universe. But to appreciate what was gained, we must also acknowledge what was gently set aside: a holistic, participatory world. You were to walk into a building, was to step into a model of creation itself. where every color in a window and every ratio in a wall spoke of a deeper, resonant harmony between the human spirit and the star-filled sky. That integrated vision did not vanish, however. It retreated, waiting to be rediscovered by those who would look at the old stones and ask not just how they were built, but why they make us feel the way they do. The great unraveling was not an ending, but a transformation. That deep human impulse to build a bridge to the stars did not vanish with the telescope. It simply found new materials and new metaphors. The connection never fully died, it evolved. In our modern world, we see its echoes everywhere, from our grandest public institutions to our most intimate artistic encounters, proving the ancient dialogue between earth and sky remains a powerful, living source of inspiration. Consider the planetarium. Walk into one of these darkened chambers today, and you are stepping into a direct descendant of the painted cave of Lascaux and the domed Pantheon. It is a sacred space of a secular age where architecture is designed for a single purpose, to frame the heavens. The curved dome is the canvas, but now a sophisticated array of digital projectors acts as the modern shaman's torch, painting not just static stars, but the dynamic dance of galaxies, the birth of solar systems, and the precise paths of planets across millennia. It is a cave of wonders using fiber optics and software to achieve what our ancestors sought with pigment and stone, to bring the overwhelming scale of the cosmos into a comprehensible, awe-inspiring human scale. The planetarium is our contemporary megalith, a communal space where we still gather in the dark to remember our place in a vast, beautiful universe. This desire for a direct sensory encounter with celestial phenomena drives some of the most profound art of our time. Artists like James Turrell do not paint pictures of the sky, they use architecture to frame the sky itself as the artwork. His sky spaces are precisely engineered chambers with a square or circular aperture open to the heavens. You sit inside, and as your eyes adjust, the rectangle of blue above seems to solidify, to become a tangible plane of color that shifts from dawn's pale pink to the deep indigo of twilight. Turrell manipulates perception using light alone, creating an experience that feels less like looking at something and more like being inside the mechanism of vision itself. His work is a quiet, meditative revival of the principle behind the Pantheon's oculus, reminding us that the most powerful cosmic connection often requires nothing more than a carefully framed view and a moment of stillness. On a monumental scale, the land art movement of the 20th century consciously revived the megalithic tradition, taking it into the open desert. Artists like Robert Smithson and Nancy Holt rejected galleries and museums to create works directly within the landscape, works that only fully reveal their meaning through celestial alignment. Smithson's Spiral Jetty, a 1,500-foot-long coil of black basalt rock extending into Utah's Great Salt Lake, is a massive earthwork that changes with the water levels and the light. While not aligned to a specific solstice, its form evokes cosmic spirals, galaxies, and ancient petroglyphs, inviting contemplation of deep time and natural cycles. Nancy Holt's sun tunnels in the Utah desert make the alignment explicit. 4 massive concrete pipes are arranged in an open X formation, each precisely drilled with holes corresponding to the stars of 4 constellations. During the solstices, the sun aligns perfectly with the tunnel's axes, turning them into colossal viewfinders framing the sunrise or sunset. To stand inside one is to participate in a ritual as old as Stonehenge, using modern industrial materials to mark a celestial event. These artists are not archaeologists, they are philosophers in concrete and earth, asking us to reconsider our relationship to time, scale, and the cosmos by physically engaging with it. These contemporary practices, from the high-tech planetarium to the raw earthwork, are not nostalgic recreations. They are evidence of a persistent, perhaps fundamental, human need. They show that our desire to use artistic and architectural forms to relate to the cosmos is undiminished. We may understand the mechanics of a supernova or the physics of light years, but we still crave the experience of wonder, the feeling of being part of something grander. The modern echo proves the ancient impulse was never about a lack of scientific knowledge. It was about something deeper, a need to build meaning, to create places and objects that anchor us within the beautiful, terrifying, and magnificent mystery of the universe. The language has changed from myth to mathematics, from zodiac symbols to star coordinates, but the conversation between earth and sky continues, written now in poured concrete, projected light, and the vast, open spaces of the land itself. Our modern world is brilliantly lit, but in a way that can leave us strangely in the dark. We have traded the star-dusted vault of the night for the constant glow of screens and streetlights, a digital sky of our own making. This is more than an aesthetic loss, it is a sensory and spiritual severance. We live increasingly in abstracted spaces, disconnected from the primal rhythms of light and dark, season and orbit that shaped our ancestors' entire sense of reality. This is why this deep history matters now, with an urgency that is quiet but profound. It offers us a path to re-enchant our world. Revisiting these ancient and medieval syntheses is not an exercise in nostalgia. It is a retrieval of a fundamental human technology, the technology of meaning-making. Our ancestors did not have the scientific facts we possess, but they possessed a profound wisdom we have often misplaced, the wisdom of integration. They understood that to build a home, a temple, or a community was also to build a cosmology, to physically orient themselves within a story larger than themselves. Their art and architecture were answers to the most human of questions: where are we, and what is our place in all of this? In our age of specialization, where science, art, and spirituality often speak in separate, isolated languages, this history whispers a different possibility. It shows us a time when these ways of knowing were braided together into a single, powerful cord capable of lifting the human spirit toward wonder. This legacy challenges our contemporary creators. It asks the architect, what if a building could do more than house people or make a stylistic statement? What if it could also track the sun, frame a lunar eclipse, or create a space for silent contemplation under a patch of visible sky? It asks the artist, how can your work reconnect us to the natural cycles we have insulated ourselves from, to the cosmic scale that puts our daily worries in a humbling, yet strangely comforting perspective? The goal is not to copy Gothic cathedrals or carve new zodiacs, but to rediscover the underlying principle that our built environment can be a dialogue with the universe, not a barrier against it. Ultimately, this history is not just about stones and stars. It is a lesson in a more integrated way of being human. It reminds us that creativity, at its highest purpose, has always been a tool for navigation, for mapping our inner lives onto the outer cosmos and finding our coordinates within infinity. In an era often characterized by fragmentation and anxiety, this ancient impulse offers a powerful antidote, a vision of wholeness. It suggests that wonder is not a childish thing to outgrow, but a vital faculty to cultivate, a compass that can orient us toward meaning, resilience, and a quiet, enduring awe. The conversation between earth and sky never truly ended. We simply need to remember how to listen, and perhaps how to build spaces where that whisper can once again be heard. That golden thread we have followed does not end in the past, it simply extends into our hands. We have journeyed from torch-lit caves to Gothic spires, tracing a profound truth that human creativity has always been a conversation with the cosmos. We watched as early art became a functional map of the stars, as architecture transformed into a solid prayer to cosmic order, and as both fused into a single language for teaching, inspiring, and anchoring entire communities within a story of sacred meaning. This deep connection was never a niche interest for the elite. It was the very bedrock of how pre-modern societies understood reality. It speaks to a universal and enduring human longing to chart the vastness of the heavens here on our earthly canvas, and in doing so, to find our own coordinates within the grand design. As we look at our own brightly lit, fast-moving world, let us carry forward this essential insight. In remembering how our ancestors wove celestial rhythms into their daily lives, we are offered a quiet invitation. Perhaps in reconnecting our own art and architecture with the natural cycles of light, season, and sky, we might build something more than efficient structures. We might craft spaces that nurture wonder again, that offer moments of stillness and perspective, and that gently remind us of our beautiful, humble place in an infinite story. This is not about abandoning modern knowledge, but about enriching it with a forgotten layer of wisdom, the wisdom of integration. If this exploration of hidden connections resonated with you, we would love to hear your thoughts. Which celestial mystery, from the painted Pleiades to the solstice alignment of a cathedral, do you find most fascinating? Share your reflections in the comments below, and subscribe to continue deciphering the timeless codes of history with us.